All rise. Oh yay, oh yay, oh yay. Silence is commanded upon pain of imprisonment while the Honorable Judge Tench of the Circuit Court is now sitting. All those having motions to make, please enter suits to prosecute or any other business before this court come forward and it shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of this honorable court. There will be no talking while there's honors on the bench. You may be seated.
Solemnly swear or affirm to take down and transcribe these proceedings to the best of your ability, so help you God.
One is on this side. This one on the back. Come back around. Faster. Show off your shoes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Newport News Circuit Court for this very special occasion of Judge Tench's, who I think I can see around the podium, Judge Tench's portrait presentation. At the outset of this very happy occasion, what I'd like to do is recognize Reverend Stephen Crane to give the invocation. Prior to that, however, let me have, would the clerk please swear in the court reporter? You already did? Okay, all right, thank you very much. All right, so if Reverend Crane would come forward, please, for the invocation.
Please join me in a prayer of invocation. Heavenly Father, it is with great joy and heartfelt thanks that we gather to honor the faithful and loyal service of our dear friend, now retired, the Honorable Charles P. Tench. He conducted himself in keeping with the high standards of ethical integrity while remaining a humble servant in keeping with his oath of office. His service reminds us that public service is a noble undertaking and brings with it the highest demands of truth, justice, and humanity. Justice is not only an ideal in which Pete believed, but also a daily opportunity to apply the golden rule which Jesus Christ announced, "Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you." When Pete was nominated to serve as judge, we remember that he said yes when he could have easily declined the duty to serve the public need for justice. So we are here this afternoon to mark the faithful service he provided through the courts by his many years of kind administration of justice. May this portrait serve as a reminder that public service is indeed a noble undertaking and that those who work to provide justice are best remembered for balancing justice with mercy. As Abraham Lincoln prayed when serving as a temporary judge, may the Almighty grant that the cause of truth, justice, and humanity shall in no wise suffer at my hands. So may it be for all who step up to serve as nobly as Pete. And this we pray, I pray, as a prayer of thanks in the name of Jesus Christ, my Lord, who set the bar for humble service to others. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Crane. I'd like the opportunity at this point to recognize some of the other members of the bench and distinguished guests that we have in attendance today. What I would like to do is start with some of our members of the judiciary. I would like to recognize and thank Federal Magistrate Judge Douglas Miller for being here. I also have the pleasure of announcing the presence of some of our circuit court judges, the current sitting circuit court judges. To my far left, she found her seat, made her way over there eventually. Judge Flythe is here. To my far right is Judge Hoffman. To my immediate right, Judge Mills. To my immediate left, Judge Sugg. We are also very delighted to have some retired Newport News Circuit Court judges here as well. Judge Conway is in the box. Judge Curran is in the box as well. We also have a retired JDR judge here. Judge Klein is here as well. I believe retired Circuit Court Judge Lerner is in the courtroom as well, but is electing to not sit in the jury box. I believe I saw Judge Lewis from JDR Court, Newport News JDR Court, has made her way in. I think probably flew up here from a very busy docket that she had in JDR Court. Excuse me, General District Court. I apologize. Thank you. And thank you, Judge Mills. I need all the help I can get up here. All right. There are other judges who I think would like to be here. I want to recognize them, but they do have dockets. Our other General District Court judges, Judge Mullen, Judge Saunders, Judge Stein, I think they have busy dockets and they're still tied up downstairs. And our other JDR judges, Judge Kirkchen, Judge Overby, Judge Robinson, Judge Roundtree, again, I'm sure they have busy dockets as well, but would very much like to be here to honor Judge Tench this morning in the presentation of his portrait. I believe Ms. Roughton here, Karen Roughton from the General District Court Clerk's Office. Again, I'm sure that she's tied up, would love to be here. Ms. Ewell from the JDR Court. Again, I'm sure she would very much like to be here, but I'm sure is tied up with a busy docket as well. I have Mr. Gwynn, Mr. Howard Gwynn, our Newport News Commonwealth's attorney. Mr. Collins Owens, our city attorney, would like to recognize. I would like to recognize Councilwoman Patricia Woodbury, I believe, is here. Good afternoon, ma'am. Our councilwoman Tina Vick is here as well. Good afternoon, ma'am. And I believe Rex Davis, our former circuit court clerk, is in attendance in this matter today. Also Cheryl Penny, who is a former deputy clerk, longtime former deputy clerk. I would like to recognize Sandy Stevenson, who was Judge Tench's courtroom clerk for many, many years, is in attendance. Want to recognize her. Renee Coltrane, who still is coming to this building every day, is here in attendance. But Ms. Coltrane was Judge Tench's judicial assistant for many, many years. Want to recognize her. I think Leonard Heath, who is a past president of the Virginia State Bar, is here. Want to recognize her. Angela Reason, our circuit court clerk, want to recognize her. I think Mr. Fraking in front of me might be here in her place and handling her duties today. Thank you very much. And I want to recognize Sheriff Morgan as well, and I think he probably has some able stand-ins today as well. Judge Morgan does, excuse me, Sheriff Morgan does to handle those duties today. So again, thank you all for being in attendance, and we very much appreciate you being here. I'm sure Judge Tench and his family do, but the rest of the circuit court very much appreciates you being here as well. At this point, what I would like to do is to recognize Joshua Goff. Mr. Goff is president for another couple of days, I believe, president of the Newport News Bar Association, so this may be one of his last official duties, but I would like to recognize Mr. Goff for a motion, please.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, I would move the court to welcome the members of the Newport News Bar Association, the many guests, friends, family members of Judge Tench, and declare this to be a ceremonial proceeding to celebrate the many years of faithful service that Judge Tench performed.
All right. The court will grant your motion, Mr. Goff, and thank you. And I would like to, again, a little more formal way, welcome everyone for being here. I know it's a very, very important day for Judge Tench and his family, and I'm sure they appreciate you being here. But on a larger scale, the entire circuit court appreciates you being here. We know that you're here to honor Judge Tench and his portrait presentation, but it's an honor to all of us in this courthouse that you are here to show your respect to Judge Tench and for the fantastic job that he has done on the circuit court and the JDR court for many, many years. So I do want to officially welcome everybody as well. I would also ask Mr. Goff, he's still at the podium, if he would like to make some introductions, please.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Thank you. I'd like to first and foremost recognize Becky Tench, Judge Tench's wife, his son Patrick Tench, and daughter-in-law Stephanie Tench, his brother and sister-in-law Robbie and Kara Tench, also brother and sister-in-law Jimmy and Vicky Crank, his niece Jennifer Chandler, nephews Jacob and Matthew Chandler, and nephew Noah Tench. Welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Goff. What I'd like to do now is kind of get to it. You want to have a seat, Mr.?
Yes, sir. I would request permission for Mrs. Tench and Patrick Tench to come up and unveil the portrait.
All right, thank you, Mr. Goff. And now we're going to get to it. If Mrs. Tench and Patrick Tench could come forward, and if you could take off that beautiful, yeah, all right, you may proceed, all right. Thank you. All right, Mr. Goff, I'm going to call on you again, please, if you could rise and make the presentation of the portrait.
Thank you, Judge. It's my honor to present this very handsome portrait to the Newport News Circuit Court and to the City of Newport News as a gift from the Newport News Bar Association in recognition of a remarkable man, someone that I've been appearing in front of ever since I became an attorney 12 years ago. And the first time I met Judge Tench, I was thinking about it a few days ago in preparation of today. He had appointed me the 11th attorney to someone in circuit court. For those of you who don't practice criminal law, that's not a good thing to be someone's 11th attorney. But I appreciated Judge Tench showed faith in me over the years and allowed me to appear in his courtroom frequently. I enjoyed it every single time. He is someone who everyone, both civil and criminal lawyers, know has an encyclopedic knowledge of the law and in particular case law, which is all the more remarkable because I'm quite certain he never turned on his computer the entire time he was a judge. But he used the books like they used to do, the case finder books, and he could recite a case from 1989 off the top of his head without ever, I don't even know if he knows what Google is, really, but did it by memory. And Judge Tench, as you all know, had such a remarkable demeanor, was so patient, frequently very patient with me when that wasn't always easy, patient with some difficult litigants at times. And I think that came from the fact that he practiced in all aspects of the court system. He started out as a clerk, worked his way through law school, was a very successful lawyer, was a judge on the juvenile court, and then at the end of his career was a judge on the circuit court. So he saw it from all sides, from the confused person coming in the clerk's office not knowing what to do, to the people going through challenges that he saw as a lawyer and later as a judge. And that gave him patience, wisdom, not just with the lawyers, but with the people as well. I never saw a time where Judge Tench did not let everyone be heard, where he was not patient, fair, and understanding with the people who came before him. So, Judge, there's only one job left for you to do, and I hear the sheriff is hiring. That's the only part of the court system you haven't been in, and you'd be great at that too, I know. I thoroughly enjoyed every single time I appeared in front of you. I still enjoy appearing in front of you. I know the packed room in here shares that sentiment. So we wish you a long and happy retirement. Wish you many days of subbing so I can still, and everyone else in here can still see you. And most importantly, wish you and Becky long walks around the neighborhood where I enjoy getting to chat with you with my dog. So congratulations, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Thank you,
and I'll be more careful. I've almost run over Josh several times. I knew you thought that much on me. I've been more careful. Okay, thank you, Scott.
On behalf of the Newport News Circuit Court, I am pleased to accept this portrait. I would like now to ask Councilwoman Vick and Councilwoman Woodbury please to come forward to accept the portrait on behalf of the City of Newport News.
I don't know that I can see over this.
I'm not going to let Pat start talking because she'll start telling stories and we'll be here like 2 hours.
It is a great honor for us to be here and accept this wonderful portrait, and it is really a great portrait of you and of many lives, thousands of lives that you have impacted and hopefully helped to make better choices. So I hope you will think about that and how much influence you have had over so many of our citizens. So we, as a part of the City Council, are just so proud to accept this on your behalf.
Yes, and I do want to thank you for all of your years of service. You and your beautiful wife, can't leave you out, but I know the citizens as well as everybody here really appreciate you and your dedication to our great city of Newport News. So thank you so much. And I'm overjoyed to be able to be here to celebrate this time.
And I'm the one she says talks.
I just usually like to take up Pat's time, but it's a wonderful portrait, and thank you, and we accept it.
Councilwoman Vick and Woodbury, thank you very much for your comments. I would like to ask Mr. Goff now if he would please introduce the president of the Greater Peninsula Women's Bar Association.
At this time, it's my honor to introduce Shannon Jones, who is the president of the Greater Peninsula Women's Bar Association, to bring greetings from the Women's Bar.
All right, Ms. Jones, if you'd like to come forward, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so pleased to be here on behalf of the Greater Peninsula Women's Bar Association as president for 5 more days. It's truly an honor to be here on such a special occasion, recognizing Judge Tench and all of his service and commitment to our community. I know that it is customary at these types of events that members of the bar will typically give the crazy stories that they've experienced in court with a particular judge being recognized. But I will tell you, after speaking with several members, there really aren't that many crazy stories with Judge Tench. Anyone who has come before him knows that he has always been patient and kind. He is always someone who gives everyone an opportunity to speak. And he's someone who, as has already been stated, is always the smartest person in the room. Judge Tench has truly established himself as a judge who is a working judge. He's here when you need him for a search warrant or anything like that after hours. And we hope to continue to see Judge Tench serving in a sub-judge capacity or whichever way he pleases. So on behalf of the Greater Peninsula Women's Bar Association, we want to congratulate you on your retirement. Thank you for your service, and say thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, And Mr. Goff, would you please now introduce the president of the Peninsula Bar Association?
It's my honor to introduce Veronica Meade, who will bring greetings from the Peninsula Bar Association.
All right, Ms. Meade.
Good afternoon. What an honor to greet you again, Judge Tench, this time to offer remarks upon your retirement from the bench. On behalf of the Peninsula Bar and broader communities we say from the heart, this portrait unveiling confirms you've done your part. We look forward to your subbing, socializing, and otherwise remaining active, and your consistently pleasant demeanor and matchless work ethic, of course, brook no stagnation. So thank you immensely, sir, for your tireless dedication. Thank you.
Mr. Goff?
At this time, I'd like to introduce Thomas Edmonds to give a few words.
May it please the court. I'm Tom Edmonds. I had the pleasure of being Pete's law school dean many years ago, and he asked me to come and say a word or two on this wonderful occasion. It's always a privilege for me to recognize and help honor one of my former students who has been immensely successful in the practice of law and now for the last 23 years on the bench in this community. And I'll say to honor both Pete and Becky, as you've already heard, she has played a major role in Pete's life for a long time. And while pursuing her own career in another branch of the learned profession of medicine and nursing, she has always been there for Pete and supportive of Pete in everything that he has done from his law school days forward and really before that. So I'm delighted to be here. My day-to-day contact with Pete Tench ended almost 35 years ago when he graduated at the University of Richmond Law School. I never practiced law with him. I never appeared before him a single time. But I'm impressed with what others of you have said about him and his abilities as a judge. He learned all those things at the University of Richmond, of course. A few of the faithful here, I see. But I'll say this, what I learned about Pete in law school is simply exemplified by what I've heard here today about his career as a practitioner and as a judge. Most of the people who come to law school, at least in my day, were right out of college. And of course, college is a time when you're on your own for the first time and you're doing a little drinking and a little courting and a few other things, you're making lifelong friends, perhaps meeting your partner for life, etc. And so a lot of those people, they were used to pretty much coasting and getting pretty good grades in response. And so the law school experience for them was a ton of bricks. And every year in the first month of school, I'd have 3 or 4 of those young people in my office complaining about the workload, sometimes in tears, and really confessing that this might not be for them. Sometimes I encouraged them to do something else. Sometimes I encouraged them to stick it out. But it was really tough. But a certain percentage of each class, usually 10, 15, sometimes as many as 20% of the class, was comprised of people who had done something else for a while. People who had been in the military, as Pete was, people who had worked, as Pete did in the clerk's office here for a number of years before coming to law school. He was almost 15 years out of college when he started law school. And I loved those kind of students because they were deadly serious about their work and they took pains never to be unprepared in class. Several of you mentioned Judge Tench's intellect and his abilities in terms of his knowledge of the law. And the reason he has that is he worked like hell in law school. He really did the job. And I always appreciated that about people like Pete Tench. So what I would say is he took his work very seriously. He worked hard, and the results of that are evident in what all of you to this point have said about him and his career here. But he never took himself too seriously. And, sometimes some of these experienced people who came to us, especially if they had worked in and around the law, they had been an insurance adjuster, they'd been a clerk's office person, done something that convinced them that they already knew a good bit about the law and the legal system, and that they only had so much left to learn. Pete was never like that. He took his work seriously, but he knew he had some things to learn before I signed that diploma and his character and fitness statement for the Board of Bar Examiners. I've never regretted signing his. I have had a few regrets once in a while, but never Pete Tench. So Pete, I congratulate you on your 23 years of service on the bench, your time as a practitioner in this community before that, your time in the clerk's office before that. It's been a long and illustrious career, and I wish you the best in your retirement. I hope you enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed mine. I say it's highly underrated.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds. All right, Mr. Goff.
This time I'd like to introduce Conway Sheild for remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Your honors, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly a pleasure for me to be here today to talk about Pete Tench, my friend of many years. I have to tell you that part of the pleasure is that it's so easy to say nice things about Pete and his distinguished career. The hard part is what to ignore, and trying to keep my comments, as I promised Pete Wednesday night, I would keep them short. I never appeared before Pete, so Pete, you never had a chance to object to anything I said before. It's a new experience for both of us. Anyway, it's easy to make a compelling case that Pete Tench is worthy of the respect of everybody in this room and everybody that was ever touched by him when he was a member of the judiciary. I want to talk about a couple of points of Pete, much of which has been covered today by the previous speakers, but to me, I just want to reinforce it. First thing I want to talk about is ego. Pete never really had one that ever interfered with the dispatch of his duties as a judge. We've all heard the expression, those of us lawyers, that some lawyers get what's known as robitis when they get on the bench. That never occurred to Pete, never happened. Pete was always fair to everybody who was out there. Pete always felt he was a servant of the law and not the law. Pete served the system in which he was a part. He was a trier of facts. He listened to the evidence, and he dispatched that with objectivity in every case. Pete was clearly passionate about being dispassionate about the dispatch of his duties as an attorney. And it is my impression that all appeared before Pete, lawyers, defendants, plaintiffs, witnesses, whatever, always felt that they got a fair shake, and as Mr. Goff said, he always exhibited great patience with lawyers. I can remember many times I made some arguments in front of judges which I felt like at any minute they were going to bite my head off, and I'm sure Pete never did that. Pete, as I said, always felt that he was a servant of the law, and his judicial gyroscope was that, which governed what he did, was that everybody that walked into Pete's courtroom, when they walked in, they truly were equal when they walked in the courtroom. And thereafter, whatever judicial proceeding followed, the scales of justice were always governed by fairness without any prejudice or bias. And I know that judges are supposed to do that, and I'm sure every judge in this room has done that. But Pete did that standard to a very high degree, in my humble opinion, from everything I have ever heard about Pete and what he did there. The second thing I would say about Pete is that he was never unprepared. Dean Edmonds has already covered this. I used to walk with Pete 4 or 5 nights a week when I lived in Newport News, and I can recall Pete always bringing work home, and I can recall that there were Sundays when Pete had something happen that week where he would say, I'm going to go to the office on Sunday, and I'm going to work. And I know that he did that, and my impression is that he was extremely well prepared in everything he ever did. And it was his sacred article of faith that when he appeared in a case and he was going to exercise that awesome power over life and property the judges have, that he was going to make sure that he had done everything he could to make sure that his decision on the bench was the correct one. Much of what I've said today has been covered by others, but what I would say is that Pete has always been one of my good friends. I consider it one of my blessings to have Pete and Becky as good friends. And hopefully that'll last for many years. Pete, no one could have done it better. And the second thing I'll say is, you couldn't have done it without Becky. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sheild. Mr. Goff.
this time, I'd like to introduce Patrick Tench for a moment.
Thank you, Josh. I tell you, if that is not Pete Tench, I don't know what is. That picture, it is perfect. The half smile. If you had never seen him in person and had only seen pictures of Pete Tench, you wouldn't think he had teeth. I can remember my mother vividly telling him, "Pete, smile," in every picture. But great portrait, and that really captures the essence of it. But thank you, everyone, for being here on behalf of the family. We truly appreciate it. It means a lot. I just want to share a quick anecdote with you. I'm going to be quick, even though some of our distinguished judges may not believe me when I say that, but I can remember vividly. One of the memories of my childhood is everywhere we went. Grocery store, you could be at the doctor's office, you could be at a ball game, the swimming pool, doesn't matter where we are. We'd be walking and you'd hear, "Hey, Pete, Pete, Pete." And he'd turn around and there would be somebody that needed to talk to him. And being a little kid, I didn't understand. I'd go, "Oh, here we go. I'll have to wait another 20 or 30 minutes now." And he would stand and talk and give that person the time of day, and they would have a great conversation. And I would get back to where Mom was, and she'd say, "Where's your dad?" And I'd say, "Well, he ran into so-and-so." And that happened time and time and time again. And as I got older, I started to understand that that's just the effect he has on people. People are drawn to him because of the personality traits that everybody's talked about, being so kind, so fair, so patient, so compassionate. It's just not traits that you see in everyone altogether. And I've been most proud. I've never seen a person that has such a strong sense of morality and right and wrong and being fair with people and making sure that you're acting with integrity and that you were doing the right thing for everybody. And so I know the qualities that made him a great dad, all those things, patience, compassion, fairness, that made him a great judge as well. And so I'm glad. I think my sister and I probably had a little bit of hand in that in creating some of the patience. But when I first, and I'll end with this, that when I first became a lawyer, especially when I came back down here, I would always be introduced as Pete's son. And at the time I thought, well, I'm me, I'm Patrick. Why am I Pete's son? But now I understand that's really a badge of honor. I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be Pete's son. And so, Dad, I love you. I couldn't be more proud of you. And congratulations. I know you've worked very hard for this. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, Patrick. I would like now to recognize Judge Tench for some comments.
First, it's kind of a shock to actually be on the ground floor of the court room, looking out, saying something to somebody, and it's really unusual because, as you said, I have been around a long time. I thank everyone that has come today to support our family and me in this occasion. I've had numerous friends and family that have come from far away, and I'm especially appreciative of that. And Josh, Shannon, Veronica, thank you for being here. Thank the Newport News Bar Association for sponsoring this event. And John Waters did a beautiful job on that portrait. Now, I will tell you, that portrait is kind of old. Because a few years back, my wife said, I think it's a good idea for you to get this portrait done. You're not getting any younger. And I said, well, I don't want to do it this early. And no, you have to have it done. So we've had it done. And, last year we scheduled this ceremony, and a couple of days before it was supposed to take place, my grandson, my daughter and son-in-law grandchildren live in Texas, Dallas, Texas. He came down with COVID. So now this year we scheduled this. And a short period of time ago, my granddaughter, who was visiting her best friend's grandparents, fell off of a golf cart, broke her foot, broke her ankle, and mangled her other leg, and she's under doctor's care, and they could not travel. So we're going forward without them. They're not here. I thank Dean Edmonds and Conway and Patrick for their kind and exaggerated words, but I know this. Praise is like aftershave. It feels real good going on, but if you swallow it, it can kill you. And I'm not going to swallow it. You know, it's been many years since I was a senior at Newport High School, located just 3 or 4 blocks from this courthouse. And I remember sitting in Mrs. Cameron's senior English class, and I would daydream, what will I do once I graduate? Because I had intentions to leave the area and perhaps never come back, seek my fame and fortune in other places. Because I'd heard the expression that life is a journey to be lived and not a destination. Well, what a journey I've had over the years and all the people that have been such an influence on my life. We'll take a few moments just to recognize a couple. My dad, who was a highly decorated combat infantryman in World War II, a disabled veteran. He was a lifelong police officer and a graduate of the FBI Academy, but a great father. He was a gentleman, he was kind, he was steadfast, he was supportive, and quick to listen, slow to repeat and talk, and he was a major influence. Also, Tom Eliason, the longtime executive director of the Boys Club of the Virginia Peninsula, which is now the Boys and Girls Club of the Virginia Peninsula, affectionately known as Mr. Tom to thousands of young boys on the peninsula. He was my advisor, he was my teacher, and he was my second father during my childhood and early adult life. And I'm eternally grateful for him, for his influence on me, and he's had the influence on an untold number of young men who grew up to be productive citizens, and I thank Mr. Tom for that. Judge Douglas M. Smith, as many of you may remember, my first entry into the court system was as Judge Smith's clerk, and I served as his clerk for a period of 10 years. And as such, I got to, watch, listen, and learn from one of the judges I think was the greatest to ever sit on the circuit court bench. What an experience. That's something that cannot be duplicated. And he has and will always be the person that has influenced me the most when I make a decision, when I've made decisions in the courtroom. And I'm proud to say that his widow, Peggy, and her husband, Jake, his daughter, Susan, and her husband, Rob Getz, and I don't know if Doug and Diana, his son, are here today, but I thank you all for coming here. I'm honored. My portrait will be in courtroom number 1. That was my old courtroom, and in that courtroom, Judge Smith and his father, Herbert Groom Smith, their portraits are prominently displayed. And together, when Judge Smith retired, he was the longest sitting circuit court judge in Virginia. He sat for 28 years, and he retired at age 60. His father before him had sat for 22 years. So the combination, they were circuit court judges in Newport News for over 50 years. Perhaps the person, and I have to say this, Conway was kind enough to say this, but, well, first I will say, Dean Edmonds, at some point, Becky and I made this decision that I should go to law school. And I asked Judge Smith about it, and I said, Judge, even if I got in, if I graduated, I don't know, there's so many lawyers. Now, this is years and years ago. I said, there's so many lawyers. He said, but there's always room at the top for the good ones. So I make the decision to go to law school, and in part, not only influenced by my dad's career in law enforcement, but I remember as a young kid, there was a great program on television. It came on every Saturday night, I think at 7 o'clock, Perry Mason. Perry Mason, he was this great defense attorney, I think in Los Angeles, California. And every Saturday night, my family, my brother and I, my parents, we'd sit there and watch Perry. And he always had a case, you knew, there's no way Perry can win this. He's going to lose. The odds are just stacked against him. And every week, you'd watch to see, is he finally going to lose? And he would always pull the rabbit out of the hat, and he would turn and say, "It was you," and this person would, "It was me," and break down, start. Never had that happen. Well, not too long, last week I was over at the Virginia Bar Conference, State Bar Conference. I was talking to a colleague, and we chatted about Perry Mason. He said, "You know, he was my hero. He's why I wanted to go to law school." And I said, "Perry was great, but he was not my hero." And he said, "Well, who was your hero?" And I said, "Hamilton Berger, the district attorney." And he looked at me for a minute, and unlike the great Howard Gwynn, our Commonwealth attorney who's never lost a case, this guy said, "Well, you know, Hamilton Berger never won a case." I said, "Yes, but he always got reelected." But Dean Edmonds, I vividly remember you granting me a personal interview and being so kind and encouraging and allowing me to go and be admitted to the University of Richmond School of Law. And that one decision changed and influenced my life forever. I was lucky upon graduation being asked to join the prestigious firm of Jones, Blackman, Wallace, and Kelly. And I am thankful for, you know, their guidance. I'm very grateful for their loyalty, their guidance, and their support. And I was friends with many of the attorneys there, and I will say, and I thank my partners and still lifelong close friends, Conway, Bert Kelly, Rick Donaldson, late Stain Lassen. In addition, one of the senior partners there, and the attorneys and older judges will know that have been around, was Raymond Suttle. And Donna, his daughter, and her husband are here today, and I'm honored with that. But Raymond, for some reason, he took me under his wing. And he taught me to be a lawyer, but more important, to be a gentleman. I'm eternally grateful for that. But the person, as Dean Edmonds and Patrick and Conway have said, the person that made the biggest difference and impact on my life is my wife, Becky. Go figure. She's been with me every step of the way, supporting me, guiding me, encouraging me, and most loving me. And November 1st of this year, we will celebrate our 52nd anniversary. An added benefit of marrying Becky is I inherited a great brother-in-law and sister-in-law that are, you know, they've not only supported us and helped us, they've been there every step of the way. And we're not only brother-in-law and sister-in-law, we're great friends. And they're here today. And Becky and I have been blessed to have two great children, wonderful children, my daughter Emily and her husband Andy. My son Patrick and his wife Stephanie. We're just blessed to have them. They're wonderful, wonderful spouses. And two grandchildren that are the light of our lives. We wish they were here. We understand it. We cannot postpone this any longer. When I look out at those gathered here today, I have to think, and I'm very touched and mindful that I wouldn't be here but for most of you that are here that have helped me along the way. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to serve with you. And if I had any success in what I've done, it's directly attributed to the talented and dedicated people I've worked with. You know, when I was in the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court for a short period, not that long, couple of 3 years, before I came to the Circuit Court. Patsy Ewell, the clerk, was great. My clerk was Pat Delt, just tremendous, and all the ladies and men that worked there were great. I've had 3 administrative assistants, Ms. Murphy, the older attorneys will know Ms. Murphy, Jean Snyder, both of them have passed away, and of course I have Renee, who's been with me for years, and she's just excellent. And Judge Flake, you confirmed with me, now I know how smart you are when you asked Renee to stay with you. That was a great decision. And I've only had 2 clerks throughout my tenure on the Circuit Court. Tracy Hayes was super. And then when she got promoted, Sandy Stevenson picked up without missing a beat. I mean, they were just great. They saved me so many times and had me correct. Judge, do you mean that? No, well, no, now that you told me, I didn't know. And you've gotten it wrong. Well, they got me right. I've had great bailiffs. I had Deputy Gray, Deputy Woodson, Deputy Struthers, and Deputy Ainge. And I'll tell you something that one of the bailiffs told me, and I didn't realize this. One of the deputies and the other clerk substituted one day, and I kept seeing him go in to where they have the lockup. On the other end, it's to our left, it's in here. And he'd come back and he'd go over and whisper something to my bailiff. A few minutes later, he was over there back in. And I didn't know what was going on. The other day, I came to substitute, and he said, Judge, I think I'm going to finally tell you something. And he tells me the story. I said, oh, yeah, I remember years ago you were going in and out. I said, what was going on? He said, I thought there was a prisoner in there hitting something. I said, what? He said, I thought there was a prisoner. There wasn't anybody in there. And finally, Deputy Woodson, my bailiff at the time, said, don't you know what that is? And he said, no. He said, that's Judge Tench tapping with his feet. I didn't know I was doing that. My wife tells me, stop it. And I was doing that subconsciously. And Judge Smith, my old mentor, used to do that. And, well, you know, sometimes you do things you don't realize you're doing. And Josh, you alluded to the fact that, you know, I didn't open the computer. I did. And I know the Supreme Court came down one time. They were updated, and they turned it on and said, have you turned this on before? And I said, no. I said, I know I haven't. He said, well, it's going to take a day or two to update. But I never used it. But I used to look at the books. And there may be somebody here, I'm not going to ask who it is. One of the best advices I ever got, because my wife has told me this also, but I had a habit sometimes, you probably know, that I'd be looking down trying to read something. I'm looking at a case or something while attorneys are talking. And on our judicial evaluations before the appointments, you know, sometimes you get I very seldom got any comments, but had one that said, oh, he's just a great judge, but he's got one annoying habit. He's not looking at me while I'm talking, and that's one of my annoying habits, because people are talking, I'll start looking down. But I remember from law school, Professor Shepard, who's passed away now, he told us early on, he said, you know, you have to be able to do more than one thing at a time when you're a lawyer, and I don't know. As I prepare to close, I think about all these years, and it's been 57 years since I graduated from high school, and I remember thinking to myself, I want to get out of here. And I have spent the majority of my working life within several blocks of Newport News High School. How about that? You know, Judge Smith was such a great example for me, and when I spoke at his funeral, I said, when I think of Judge Smith, I'm drawn to the Bible, which is Micah chapter 6, verse 8, in which the prophet Micah rhetorically asks, and what does the Lord require of thee but to be fair and kind, just and merciful? And you know, I always thought of Judge Smith being that way, so if any of him has rubbed off on me, and I think it has, I hope I have been fair, kind, just, and merciful. And I've tried to treat people the way I want to be treated, and there's a lot of days you get cases and you get people in predicaments. It's just no good answer. It's just not going to be good. But amazingly enough, over the course of time, I've gotten letters from defendants and other parties, their parents, and said, we knew you had to do it, but you were very nice. And you know, and I don't know how that goes. How can you be nice when you're doing some things that you don't want to do? Well, I do thank everyone that's come today. I don't know, you know, over time, we judges know this, that it's very difficult to become a judge in Virginia. You know, it's just really a select process. You have to be very, very fortunate and lucky. And over the years, I've thought, why did I get this? I don't know the reason why I was it luck? Was it just being in the right place at the right time? And I finally kind of figured out, I think it was the Lord's will. And it just was meant for me. And I think of the 71st Psalm, King David kind of toward the end of his life, and I'll just repeat a few words from it because I think it's very applicable to me when he said that you were the one, you were my mighty protector. You were the only one, and but for you, I would not have done this. And he said, you have been with me since birth, and you've always protected and guided me. And the part I like, he said, now that I'm old and gray, don't desert me. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And, well, I don't know what else to say, but thanks.
Thank you very much, Judge Tench. All right, Mr. Goff.
Your Honor, at this time I'd move that a copy of these proceedings be spread in the record of the court.
Court grants the motion, and a copy of the proceedings will be spread in the record of the court.
That further move that a copy of the proceedings be forwarded to Judge Tench.
The motion will be granted, and the court orders that a copy of the proceedings be forwarded to Judge Tench. At this time, I would like to recognize Reverend Crane again for the benediction, please.
Well, Pete, I'll speak for all of us. We're glad you never left Newport News, and we're glad your journey brought you this way. I knew I was going to have to pray an invocation, but it wasn't until I came into the courtroom that Becky told me I was going to have to do the invocation, so I'll do the best I can. Would you join me in a prayer of thanks? Heavenly Father, our hearts are filled with joy and gratitude to having the opportunity to know Pete and Becky, Lord, to enjoy their public service and their private friendship, Lord, their loyalty and encouragement. And Lord, we pray your blessing upon them, Lord, that you would go with them, bless them with good health, good friends, and the strength to make the journey all the way to the completion. And we ask this in Jesus' name, and all God's people said, amen.
Thank you. All right, at this time, what I'd like to do is thank one more person who did so much hard work, Jenny DeCenzo of the Newport News Bar Association. I want to make sure we all thank her for all of her hard work in this matter. There will be a reception in the hallway after this matter adjourns, and that's what's going to happen now. I adjourn court at this point, and thank you very much for coming.